Welcome back to Fourth and Favre, episode 11. I'm joined with Randy, the natural couture. Randy, do you know what's significant about the number 11?
Hmm. What? Before I
Well,
speculate.
number one is you're the first person not named Brett Favre on Fourth and Favre podcast. So that's number one. The second thing is UFC 11, 1996. You made your debut at UFC 13, but did you watch UFC 11? Mark Coleman, Tank Abbott was on that card.
Think I saw it was either 9 or 11 that was on the VHS tape that one of my athletes from Oregon State brought over to me. And Don Fry was fighting on that card. And Don and I were roommates at Oklahoma, not roommates, teammates at Oklahoma State. My freshman year was his senior year. We were two of three guys on the team that were married. So we all ended up hanging out a lot together with our wives and stuff while we were in college. So when I saw Fry on this card, I'm like, holy hell, I know that dude. I went to school with that guy and was immediately intrigued by the sport and by what he was doing. And I always knew he was a very good boxer. A lot of people didn't know that, but he was a pretty high level boxer. He boxed as a pro for a little while. And obviously, we know he's got good wrestling skills. He wrestled all through school and in college. He was at ASU for a while and then transferred to Oklahoma State. And that's where our paths crossed and we got to know each other. So I was immediately intrigued by the sport because I saw him in that cage fighter.
Well, what's interesting is Brett is a fan of UFC and MMA. I didn't know if you knew this, but he was watching back then, and he's been a fan of yours. I know we've talked about this off the record, but when I see Brett, I mean, he played 20 years straight without missing a game. You're a two-time, two-division UFC champion of the world. What makes your guys' mindset similar? And did you see that same grit from Brett when you would see highlights of him playing with the Packers and Vikings?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing, you know, Brett, I got to go speak to the Packers and Brett's last year there. And that was a big deal for me. I remember clearly, Coach McCarthy and Brett, I think, were the only two that knew on the whole team that I was coming in. It was in December. They tried to get me come preseason, and I was tied up. I couldn't make it. So they postponed it to December. They were getting ready on that Sunday to play LA. And there was about 2 feet of snow in Lambeau. That was my first time to Green Bay, first time to Lambeau. I mean, I was in La La Land. That thing is like a museum. It's so cool. But then getting to meet, a bunch of pro football players and Brett Favre for crying out loud. And then Coach McCarthy, and they both expressed how big of fans they were of the sport and me, which I was very flattered. But talk about a butt pucker. I'm in the kitchen at the hotel pacing because I'm about to have to walk out in front of this whole team and deliver some sort of a speech. And the security guard's just looking at me like, dude, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm fine. I said, I spoke to a lot of high school kids. I've never spoken to an NFL team before. I was kind of shitting my knickers, frankly. And he's like, oh man, they're a bunch of college kids. Relax. And the second he said that, the door flung open and I was supposed to walk out on the stage. And I walked out in the middle of the stage and I'm looking at all these kids sitting in this theater, basically. He's like, oh my God, he's right. They're a bunch of college kids. And I settled right down. And it's probably one of the better speeches I've ever given. But I got to have lunch with Brett that day. He was just climbing out of a tree stand to come have lunch with me. So immediately we connected because we're both hunters, we're both outdoorsmen. But I think what a lot of fans don't recognize, and a lot of football players don't recognize, frankly, is that football is a combative sport. It's contact, hard contact, heavy contact, body on body, every single play, but they don't look at it as a combative sport. And so we start working with ball players through Jay Glazer, who's the one who hooked me up with Mike McCarthy to be able to go and do that speech. Jay and I are great friends. And we kind of formulated, using combatives, using MMA and wrestling and Greco and all the things that are indigenous to MMA to make better football players. We started with Jaron Allen and Matthews and a whole bunch of these big name guys and and getting them to look through the eyes of that fighter. You may have 10 other guys on the field with you, but you're keying off of somebody on that side of the line every single play. That guy better have the worst game of football he's ever had in his life, or you're not doing your damn job. And their eyes get big when you say that to them, and they don't look at this sport as a combative sport, and it absolutely is. So teaching them how to hand fight, teaching them how to make everything violent and painful, and learn the little nuances, nooks and crannies, and ridges and bumps in the human body to manipulate a guy, to get him out of position, to be able to execute that tackle or make that hole for that running back to get through. Linemen and linebackers, and those are the guys we want to get our hands on for sure. But we've actually gotten to work and gotten a ton of questions from quarterbacks, wide receivers, some of those technical positions that you don't really think of as being in the trenches in that combative sense. That was a big day for me, certainly, to speak in front of Brett and in front of that team. And then the next year, he went to the Jets, and they called me from the Jets and asked me if I'd come up to Seattle, which was a bit of a conflict for me because that's where I grew up. So I'm like, oh, you want me to speak to the Jets, and they're playing against the Seahawks? I'm like, I'm a little conflicted. There were 2 feet of snow in the stadium that day. It was crazy. It was a cold day, but getting to stand on that sideline at Lambeau, even though it was 12 degrees, I felt bad for all the LA players. Man, that was a highlight for sure. It was an amazing day.
Do you remember any points that you spoke about that day?
It's all about facing adversity, that mindset, looking through those fighters' eyes. Again, making that guy on the other side of the line of you have the worst game of football he's ever had and never want to play you again. That's your goal every time you walk out there for every single play of the day. That means you have to train that way in the training environment and get yourself up to be able to keep that pace and keep that mental fortitude and attitude. At every single play, you're looking at that guy winking and like, oh, I'm going to make you pay again. Break him. That's your job. Break that guy.
Randy, it's January 2026. I said it right. January 2026.
I know, right?
Can you imagine that you'd be alive in 2026? Given how 2025 went different ways for a lot of people, but I remember you got in a car accident, I don't know, last year, and then,
Yeah.
I texted you because I was like, "Wow." TMZ broke the news that you had got in a car accident. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just seen you in April at the Green Beret Challenge where you absolutely killed you were getting standing ovations. Couldn't believe you were able to do what you did there with the youngsters. But how was your 2025 and the accident? Are you fully recovered?
Fully recovered from the accident. Got some scars on the arm, and the left hand took the brunt of most of the burns. The left hand has recovered well. I can make a fist again. You can see some of the scarring there on the heel. That's one of the areas they were worried about potentially having to do a graft on because it got burned. The skin's pretty thin there, and it got burned pretty bad. But no grafts, thankfully, which would generally double your healing time. They're literally taking skin off your thighs to put on your hands, so that will grow. Mine grew back, so I didn't need. Thanks to blue scorpion venom, uh, a bunch of modalities. There's a new stem regen supplement. They sent me a bunch of their supplements. I think between those two, for sure, hyperbaric chambers, my healing went very, very well and very, very fast. The doctors were like, damn, you're healing really well. So we were worried about range of motion for a while there, but the hand has recovered well. Erin, my occupational therapist, who was on the U.S. hockey team, by the way, uh, she did a great job of getting this hand back in face. So I got a jab again. I can, but yeah, I had the opportunity to get into drag racing, and I've been into hot rods and cars since I was in school, in high school. I was in auto shop and all that stuff growing up. It was one of the things that connected me to my dad. Was working on cars, and he did all that stuff himself too. That's how that generation was, right? And so the opportunity came along to get involved in a new racing circuit, which on the surface sounded great, and I was very intrigued by being a driver and learning all the things that would take. At 62 years old, why not? And that started to turn into kind of a reality show, and I didn't really want to be involved in another reality show. But in the meantime, I had gone to Pomona and to the drags there, which was my very first drag race 10 or 11 years ago. And looking at it with different eyes now, looking at it, well, man, I might have to drive one of these damn rockets, one of these cars. And in the process, met a guy named Randy Glady, who is the chief, the owner of Skag Power Tools. And him and I just hit it off. It was one of those things. I meet this guy. Here's a literally one of the wealthiest guys in our country, the second biggest power tool company in the US. And he's making sure everybody's got water and just, I'm like, who the heck is this guy? I mean, he's a really, really interesting guy. They spend all their marketing money on their race team to promote Skag. And we just hit it off. He's like, man, I want to sponsor you as a driver. I want you to drive for our team. And so the reality show thing kind of went away, and now I got a bona fide sponsor that wants to certify me, help me get certified to drive a drag car on his team. So I said about that process. I went to Frank Hawley's drag school. We working towards getting my gas license. That's a gas car, a 10-second, 9-10-second car, still a super fast car. It messes with your vision, your reaction time. You drive those cars with the seat of your pants. You feel them. You don't have time to do this. It's a really, really strange thing. It's counterintuitive to everything you've ever been taught about driving a car. There's a lot more to it. They make it look easy, just like a guy on a surfboard makes that look really easy. And there is nothing easy about that. Um, I got through the process with Frank. Didn't quite make my certification through to school, but had a track down in Tucson set up to do some more practice runs because I needed a lot more practice. I needed to get better at all the procedures from fire procedures on down the line. So, um, went to Tucson, got a bunch more runs in a gas car. Did my first run in the alcohol car that I was trying to move up into the pro mod, which is kind of the third class down from the nitro funny cars and the dragsters. A crazy car. It's a 5-second car. I mean, this thing will do a quarter mile in 5 seconds. It's a rocket, and it runs on alcohol, not gas. So that's what makes it way faster. Well, I'm driving Al Capone, a 1937 Chevy, and my first trip down the track in that car was like, holy hell, what did I get myself into? This is a whole different animal than that gas car, which goes 10 seconds in a quarter mile. And we ran out of time that day, and I couldn't do any more runs and couldn't, I needed to do enough clean runs to get certified in a pro mod car. So we got another track out in Kansas City that was willing to let us use their track. Nobody there, would just be us. So we scheduled that for July last year and rolled in, got everything set up. That first run, I did a great burnout. I backed the car up. My ground guide, the only thing I can think is my ground guide was pushing me left because you're trying to stay right in the groove of that track. Those cars will almost go straight by themselves because there's a groove in every track. You just got to be soft handed and let the car do what it does. I launched the car, staged the car, launched the car, and immediately took off to the left for the center line of the track. Now, I should have just taken my foot off the gas pedal, but I'm, trying to get certified, trying to get all these runs in the 2 days that we have to get all this done. And I tried to save the run and steer it back into the groove, and I overcorrected and shot it right into the wall on the right side of the track. Now I ricocheted off that wall. I'm like, you're going to hit one wall, you might as well hit them both, right? So I went all the way across the track and almost, at almost a 90-degree angle, hit the second wall on the left side of the track. Thank God there was nobody else at the track because there would have been another racer in that lane had we been racing that day. Now that direct impact hit the fuel canister in the front of the car and exploded it and shot that alcohol fuel all over that hot motor. So now I'm sitting in a cab of a car that's on fire. And I popped my my harness, my seat belts. It's a 5-point harness that holds you in this on that rocket. And started getting out of that car, popped the door, grabbed onto the roll cage halfway out of the car. The thing about alcohol is you don't see the flames. You don't know how hot it is in there with alcohol. So when I'm grabbing all this stuff to get out of the car, I'm burning myself. And I don't really realize it in the moment. I just didn't realize it at all. I'm halfway out of the car when the first EMT runs up. He grabs me by the Hans, the neck, neck break brace. It gets me the rest of the way out of the car. Now I'm standing there trying to get this helmet off, not realizing I'm burned. I can't get the helmet off. They finally just clipped the strap and I took the helmet and the balaclava off and I was pissed. I mean, I was just pissed. I just wrecked this beautiful car. What the hell? And they were kind of scared to come near me, frankly. They finally got me calmed down, got me laid down. Glenn, one of my mentors in racing, he's been racing a long time, and Nate, the guy who built the car I just crashed, they get there. Glenn is a paramedic. He's a police officer. He's helping me get settled down because there's no real paramedics there yet. Um, and they start cutting everything off. And that's when I start realizing, oh boy, this isn't going to be pretty. Um, they had already, the paramedics that were there, the ambulance that was there is like, well, it's a 45-minute drive to Kansas City. Probably a lot more efficient to just call the helicopter. So they loaded, a helicopter was on its way. They loaded me on the helicopter. They gave me some pain meds to get me to the ER and the burn center in Kansas City. Um, my life was never in danger. That car was never, engulfed in flames like the media. Now, TMZ did a pretty good job because we gave them, I knew I was going to have to walk to the airport bandaged from both hands. I mean, I literally had one finger that wasn't bandaged to get from Kansas City back home to Vegas to finish all the treatment that I needed to do. So the cat was going to be out of the bag. So I called my manager, my business manager, Sam, and said, "Hey man, I think we need to put this story out so that it gets pulled right." And we have a really good relationship actually with TMZ. Sam, my business manager, knows the guy that runs that whole show uh, very, very well. So we called him and we told him exactly what happened and what the situation was, and that I was going to be coming home to finish my treatment, and that I'm fine, and life isn't in danger, none of that. And
What
they
was
did a pretty good job with the story, but all the other media outlets took it, embellished it, car fully engulfed in flames and life flighted to the hospital and all this other stuff that wasn't actually true. So obviously once the cat was out of the bag, it was off and running, and my phone and everybody else who knew me's phone blew up. So it was a crazy day for sure. Definitely got my attention. And I think both figuratively and literally, I'm going to stay in my lane. And I'm not going to get back in the car and continue to try and drag race at 62 years old. I want to spend more time with my grandkids, for crying out loud. I don't need a new hobby. I was happy to be part of this team with Randy Glady and the person that he is. But at the end of the day, my kids have already sacrificed tons of time for me to chase around fighting and wrestling for as long as I did. And that's time I'll never get back with them. So I need to shift the focus of the lens a little bit and say, look at the stage of my life where I'm at. I'm happy. I'm content. Chased those dreams for a long, long time. Kind of need to stay in my lane and settle down and spend more time with my family. Frankly, a race schedule's crazy. I was doing a quarter of what these guys do. They travel all over the country and race these cars all over the country. I was only going to do 5 that first year. And that was a stress with all, the 10 PFL shows, all the charity stuff I do, chasing any movies or TV shows, acting in the acting world that I'm doing on top of that. I mean, the schedule was just getting crazier and crazier. So I'm going the other way now. I'm going to slow down. I want to spend more time at my ranch. I want to spend more time with my grandkids, and really kind of focus on those things that sacrifice so much time so that I could chase those dreams back in the day.